It was the day after Christmas. The presents were still under the tree. The house was decorated. The family was home. And somewhere inside that house, a 6-year-old girl named JonBenét Ramsey was being murdered. Her mother found a ransom note on the stairs, 2.5 pages long, handwritten, demanding $118,000 for her daughter's safe return. $118,000, the exact amount of her father's Christmas bonus that year. Police were called. Friends arrived. Hours passed. And then, 7 hours after the note was found, JonBenét's father made his way to the basement and found his daughter lying on the floor. She had been strangled. She had been struck in the head with such force that her skull was fractured. She was 6 years old. Nearly 30 years later, nobody has been charged. Nobody has been convicted. The case is still open, and the question that has haunted America for 3 decades: who killed JonBenét Ramsey? Boulder, Colorado. Christmas, 1996. John and Patsy Ramsey were living what looked like a perfect life. John was the president of Access Graphics, a computer company that had just become a subsidiary of Lockheed Martin. He was worth an estimated $6 million. Patsy was a former Miss West Virginia, beautiful, ambitious, and devoted to her 2 children. Their son Burke was 9 years old, and their daughter JonBenét, 6 years old, was already a rising star in the child beauty pageant world. She had won titles including Little Miss Colorado, America's Royale Miss, and National Tiny Miss Beauty. She had performed on stages in sequin dresses and full makeup. She had a float with her name on it in the Boulder Christmas Parade, just 1 week before her death. On Christmas night, the family returned home from dinner at a friend's house. Patsy carried the already sleeping JonBenét to bed. She tucked her in. She kissed her goodnight. It was the last time she would see her daughter alive. At 5:52 a.m. on December 26th, Patsy Ramsey came downstairs to make coffee. On the spiral staircase, she found the note, 2.5 pages, written on paper from Patsy's own notepad, with Patsy's own pen. The note was bizarre. It was rambling, almost theatrical. It referenced a small foreign faction. It gave specific instructions. It warned the Ramseys not to contact police, and then gave them until 10 a.m. for a phone call that never came. Patsy called 911 immediately. Within minutes, friends and family began arriving at the house. They roamed freely through the Ramsey home, touching surfaces, moving objects, unknowingly destroying what would later be critical evidence. Police arrived but focused primarily on JonBenét's bedroom. The rest of the house, including the basement, was not properly secured. For hours, JonBenét was lying in the basement, undiscovered, while police and family moved above her. At around 1 p.m., a detective asked John Ramsey to search the house for anything unusual. John went to the basement. He opened the door to a small windowless room and found his daughter. What investigators found raised more questions than answers. JonBenét had been strangled with a garrote, a cord tightened around her neck using one of her mother's paintbrushes as a handle. Whoever made it knew what they were doing. She had a skull fracture, caused by a blow to the head so severe it would have rendered her immediately unconscious. There was no sign of forced entry, initially, but investigators later found an open basement window and a suitcase positioned directly beneath it, as if someone had used it to climb out. A boot print near JonBenét's body did not match any shoe owned by anyone in the family, and DNA DNA recovered from JonBenét's clothing belonged to an unidentified male, not John Ramsey, not Burke, not anyone in the family. A stranger's DNA on a murdered child in a house that was supposedly locked. That DNA has been entered into the national database. 28 years later, no match has ever been found. The JonBenét Ramsey investigation became one of the most heavily criticized police investigations in American history. The Boulder Police Department, a small department with almost no homicide experience, was completely unprepared for what they faced. They failed to secure the crime scene. They allowed friends and family to contaminate evidence. They didn't properly search the house for hours. They refused help from more experienced agencies. And then they focused almost entirely on the parents. Patsy and John Ramsey spent years under crushing public suspicion. The media portrayed them as guilty. Neighbors avoided them. Their lives were destroyed. In 1999, a grand jury voted to indict both parents on charges of child abuse, resulting in death and accessory to a crime. But the district attorney refused to sign the indictment. He said the evidence was insufficient. The secret grand jury vote wasn't revealed to the public until 2013, 14 years later. Then in 2008, new DNA testing completely exonerated the Ramsey family. The DNA on JonBenét's clothing confirmed an unknown male had been in contact with her, someone who has never been identified. Patsy Ramsey never knew she was cleared. She died of ovarian cancer in 2006, 2 years before the DNA results came back. Over nearly 3 decades, dozens of suspects have been investigated. The Santa Claus. Bill McReynolds had dressed as Santa Claus at the Ramsey home just days before JonBenét's murder. His wife had written a play years earlier about a young girl who was murdered in her basement after Christmas. He was investigated. His DNA didn't match. He was cleared. The confession. In 2006, a school teacher named John Mark Carr confessed to killing JonBenét while living in Thailand. He was arrested and flown back to America. He said he had been with her when she died. He said it was an accident. Then his DNA came back, and it didn't match. He had never been in Boulder that Christmas. His confession was false. Why he confessed was never explained. The intruder. Detective Lou Smith, one of the most respected homicide detectives brought in to work the case, spent years building the intruder theory. The boot print, the open window, the suitcase, the unknown DNA. He believed an intruder entered the home on Christmas night, hid, and committed the murder. He died in 2010, still convinced of this theory. The Netflix documentary. In 2024, Netflix released a new documentary re-examining the case with modern technology. John Ramsey, now 80 years old, gave lengthy interviews. He believes the unknown DNA is the key. He believes new technology can finally identify the killer. The Boulder Police Department stated in December 2024 that the investigation remains active and ongoing. A 6-year-old girl, found in her own basement. On the day after Christmas, in a house full of people, a ransom note written with her mother's pen, on her mother's notepad, demanding her father's exact Christmas bonus amount, a stranger's DNA on her clothing, a boot print that belonged to nobody, a confession that turned out to be false, a grand jury that voted to indict her parents, a secret kept for 14 years, and a mother who died, never knowing she had been cleared. Nearly 30 years later, The killer has never been found. The DNA has never been matched. JonBenét Patricia Ramsey was 6 years old. She deserved to grow up. The case is cold, but the truth never freezes. Subscribe to Dark Cold Cases. Every week, we reopen the files the world forgot.